Hello, everybody. My name is Stewart Gray. I'm an English teacher, and I'm here to talk a little bit about how to include justice, debate, and rhetoric in English classes. Now, I love getting my students to have interesting conversations, and I'm going to talk a bit about how I do it in a way that you might be able to use. But first, why do I think this is important? Well, I went to a very forward-thinking grad school, and they introduced me to Paulo Freire, who reminds us that a teacher doesn't have to be a transmitter of knowledge. A teacher can be a transformative intellectual, someone who makes the classroom a space for important conversations. And when I heard that, I thought, that's fantastic, I want to do that. But the problem was, at that time, my students mostly looked like this. And I thought about trying it anyway, like let's have some really hard conversations with these small children. I didn't do that very much, but eventually I became a university teacher, and I thought, this is my chance. They're older, more mature, we can have some important conversations. But I quickly learned that no matter what topic I gave them, they could finish any conversation in about 20 seconds. I would joke sometimes that even if I asked them to discuss, is there a God, they would still finish it in 20 seconds. Like, what do you think? I think yes, me too, and that would be it. So I quickly realized that if I wanted good conversations, I would need to redesign the class. I would need topics which were interesting and which would have no easy answer. And I would also need an activity that would encourage students to engage with those topics, and maybe some kind of approach to getting them to argue in a bit more detail. So first, how do I select topics these days? I've been very inspired by the book Justice by Michael Sandel, who points out that a lot of important topics are difficult because there is no right answer. Often we're choosing to maximize one thing and lose another. More freedom, less happiness, more virtue. And I think this is a good way to think about topics. I have an example of a topic I have used. Imagine this. You see your friend's husband holding hands with another woman. Should you tell your friend what you saw? Maybe by not telling, you can maximize their happiness, but what about the virtue of being an honest friend? It's a good topic because there's no easy answer. And I find that good topics often begin with should, because should questions always contrast virtue with freedom. And indeed, all themes have good should questions. I was doing a class about food recently, and a student suggested, should we all be vegans, as a discussion topic. Now that's a good one. And so yeah, this is how I think about topic selection. Happiness or freedom or virtue. A topic where you have to choose one is a good one. For example, should children use smartphones? Or should the rich pay more tax? In fact, I find that if I ask students to give me a question beginning with should, they produce some pretty good topics themselves. That's a hint for you. So that's a few thoughts about topic selection. Next, I'm going to introduce my favorite activity for getting students to discuss. Now, it doesn't look a lot like this. It's not very formal, there aren't a lot of rules, but I'm not a debate teacher, I'm a speaking teacher. And this is what I want to see. One-on-one, fight to the death argument, that's the kind of thing I like. So what I do in my class, I begin with a suitable controversial topic, like this, and I divide the room in two, with all people on the same team sitting together. And I make a yes team and a no team. And I tell them that they have to argue yes or no, depending on their team, regardless of what they really think. And in the first stage, they're all sitting with their teammates. So I give them time, 3 minutes, to make plans together. What will they say? After that, I divide up the room, and I remind them, it's an argument, you're not allowed to agree, I want to hear you disagreeing. Say, I don't think so, and then they get to it. And they can get very energetic indeed. I disagree, it's brilliant. And that is my favorite activity. It's a good one for many reasons. It often requires very little preparation. I've done the activity I just described with students who have never seen it before. And it's very high energy because you're asking them to disagree, so they have to listen carefully and then oppose each other. No, that's not true, because. Now, if you want to do this yourself, there are some things to think about. For example, do your students need scaffolding? Maybe some key phrases or time to write down their arguments before they begin? And also, how are you going to make sure that they are critical here, that they really engage with these issues and analyze the situation? Those are things to think about. And that brings us to the approach, how to get students to argue well. And one of the most basic things that I do is simply to remind them that it is an argument, that I expect them to listen and respond. And I give them some phrases that encourage this. When I tell them that they have to use these phrases, that forces them to actually listen to and engage with each other's ideas. Also, when I'm feeling more ambitious, I introduce this. This is a 3-part framework for persuasive argument: ethos, pathos, and logos. These 3 things are qualities that you can add to your argument to make it more persuasive. Let's take an example. We're discussing debate in EFL classes. Is it good? Ethos is authority, so it is good. I'm an experienced teacher. I know this. Logos is evidence, so research shows that debate helps students to learn languages. And pathos is emotion. Classes without debate are so boring. Don't you think students don't like those classes? These are 3 things you can add to an argument to make it more persuasive. Sometimes in class, during the argument preparation stage, I give a worksheet that looks like this, so the team can write down different types of argument that they might use to try to persuade the other side. It's a kind of argument scaffolding that I find very helpful. So these are the main points I've been trying to make from my experience here, but overall, the most important thing I want to say is this. Try to encourage hard and interesting conversations in your classes. I just find them so much more energetic and interesting than conventional conversation practice, and students love them in my experience. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this was useful to you. Here's my name and email. If anyone wants to email me with a question or a comment, please do. I'd be happy to hear it. Again, Stewart Gray, thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of the conference.